My sister allowed her in-laws to stay at my house behind my back, saying she owned IT. So I agreed to play along, but when she asked me to move out to please her mill, I made them all pack their bags and put them outside. The call from my mother came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was preparing for another sales trip. I recognized her number and almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me I should answer. "Tiffany, honey, how are you?" Mom's voice had that sweet tone she always used when she wanted something. "I'm fine, Mom. Just getting ready for a trip to Chicago tomorrow. What's up?" I tucked the phone between my ear and shoulder as I continued folding clothes into my suitcase. "Well, I have some news. Your sister is back in town. She and Derek moved back from Arizona yesterday." I paused. Amber and I hadn't spoken much since Grandma Eleanor's will reading 4 years ago. "Oh? I thought her husband's business was doing so well out there. She was always bragging about it during the holidays." Mom's voice dropped slightly. "Well, things didn't quite work out. Apparently, there were some issues with their business partners, and they decided it would be best to come home and start fresh." "I see." I knew exactly where this conversation was headed. "The thing is, honey, they're staying with us right now, but you know how small our place is. Your stepfather's knees are getting worse, and having them in the guest room means he has nowhere to do his physical therapy exercises." I closed my eyes and counted to 5. "Mom, are you asking what I think you're asking? Well, that house your grandmother left you has 3 bedrooms, and you're all alone in that big place. It would just be temporary until they find jobs and get back on their feet. Grandma Eleanor's house, my sanctuary. The one place that was truly mine after a childhood spent feeling like a guest in my own home. After Dad died when I was 5, Mom married Robert just 18 months later. Then came Amber, and suddenly, I was an afterthought." "How temporary is temporary?" I asked. "Oh, not long at all. A month or 2, tops. Derek already has some promising interviews lined up." I doubted that, but what could I say? "Fine. They can stay in the blue bedroom, but only until they find their own place." After hanging up, I sat on the edge of my bed and let memories wash over me. Amber was 6 years younger than me, Robert's biological daughter. From the moment she was born, she became the center of our family's universe. While Mom and Robert doted on her, I found refuge at Grandma Eleanor's house. Dad's mother never tried to replace my parents, but she gave me something they couldn't: undivided attention. Weekends at her house became my escape from Amber's chaos at home. She'd enter my room without knocking, borrow my things without asking, and throw tantrums when told no. Mom and Robert always defended her. "She's just a child, Tiffany. Don't be so uptight." College had been my first real taste of freedom. Living in the dorms, I could finally have my own space that no one invaded. Then, during my senior year, Grandma Eleanor passed away. I was devastated, but amid my grief came an unexpected gift. She left me her house and savings. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to help me start my life debt-free. Amber's reaction was swift and entitled, "This isn't fair, we should sell it and split the money." "She wasn't your grandmother," I'd replied. "She was my dad's mother, not related to you at all." "But we're still family, Mom, tell her." And, true to form, Mom and Robert had gently suggested I consider sharing with my sister. I refused, and our already strained relationship fractured further. We barely spoke after that, except for obligatory family gatherings. I attended her wedding when she was 20, watching her marry Derek, a man 10 years her senior with family money and business connections. They moved to Arizona shortly after, and I was secretly relieved to have her even further from my life. Now, 4 years later, they were back, and soon, they'd be in my house. I finished packing for my Chicago trip with a sense of dread. My job as a sales representative for a medical supply company kept me traveling regularly, something I usually enjoyed. Now, those business trips would serve a different purpose: escapes from whatever chaos Amber would inevitably bring into my home. A week later, they arrived with 4 suitcases of designer clothes and accessories. Amber hugged me with artificial enthusiasm while Derek shook my hand firmly. I showed them to the blue bedroom and helped them unpack. As I hung up Amber's 3rd designer coat, I couldn't help thinking that selling just one of these items could probably cover a month's rent somewhere. At dinner that night, Derek cleared his throat. "I've got some promising leads already. I'm meeting with an old college friend tomorrow who works in investment banking." "That's great," I said, genuinely hoping he'd find something quickly. Amber twirled her fork in her pasta. I won't be looking for work right away. I'm more of a homemaker, you know? I love taking care of the house and making things nice. I raised my eyebrows. Well, that's perfect then. Since you enjoy household chores, you can handle the cleaning, cooking, and laundry while you're here. Her face fell instantly. Oh, no. That's not what I meant. I like doing that in my own home. I'm a guest here, so you're a homemaker, but only when it's convenient. I couldn't help myself. Don't twist my words, she snapped. I just meant I'm still settling in. Derek jumped in to change the subject, and I let it drop. But I already knew how this arrangement would play out. Some things never change. 2 weeks into living with Amber and Derek, I'd established a routine. Wake up early, leave for work before they got up, and return home as late as possible. It wasn't ideal, but it helped me minimize my time around Amber, who had already fallen into her old habits. Despite her claims of being a homemaker, I'd come home each evening to find dishes in the sink, clothes strewn across the living room, and no sign of dinner. Meanwhile, Amber would be sprawled on my couch, scrolling through her phone or watching reality TV. "Oh, you're back," she'd say without looking up. "Can you make something to eat?" "I'm starving." The first few times, I'd bite my tongue and make dinner for all of us. By the second week, my patience was wearing thin. "Amber, what did you do today?" I asked one evening after finding the house in disarray again. She shrugged, went to see Mom and Dad, then met up with Jessica from high school. "Did you know she has 2 kids now? Her life is so boring. Did you have time to maybe run the vacuum? Or start a load of laundry?" "God, Tiffany. You're so uptight. I've been busy reconnecting with people. Besides, it's your house. Shouldn't you want to keep it nice?" I had to walk away before saying something I'd regret. Derek, at least, seemed to be making an effort. He left every morning in a suit, returning in the evenings with stories about interviews and networking events. Whether he was actually job hunting or just avoiding the house, I couldn't tell, but at least he wasn't adding to my stress. When my boss called with news of a week-long business trip to Boston, I nearly hugged him through the phone. 7 whole days away from this situation sounded like paradise. The night before my departure, I made my expectations clear to Amber. "I'll be gone for a week," I said as I packed my suitcase. "I don't want any parties in my house while I'm away. No guests staying over, no messes that'll be waiting for me when I get back." Amber dramatically rolled her eyes. "Yes, Mom. Anything else? No breathing your precious air? No sitting on your sacred furniture? Derek's got a second interview next week, so hopefully we'll be out of your hair soon anyway." I left early the next morning, trying to ignore the nagging feeling that something would go wrong in my absence. The Boston trip turned out to be a blessing. Not only did I get a break from the tension at home, but I closed a deal with a major hospital that would earn me a substantial bonus. My boss was thrilled, promising a nice percentage on top of my regular commission. "Great work, Tiffany," he said during our final call. "Take an extra day if you need it. You've earned it." I declined the extra day, booking the earliest flight home instead. Despite my concerns, part of me hoped that Amber and Derek had respected my wishes. Maybe I'd return to find the house in order and good news about Derek's job prospects. My flight landed late Sunday afternoon. The house looked normal from the outside as my taxi pulled up, which I took as a good sign. I unlocked the front door, wheeling my suitcase into the foyer when I noticed something odd. There were 3 unfamiliar suitcases stacked by the stairs. Before I could process what this meant, I heard laughter coming from the living room. Not just Amber and Derek's voices, but others I vaguely recognized. I dropped my bags and marched toward the sound. The scene that greeted me stopped me in my tracks. Amber and Derek sat on my couch, coffee cups in hand, across from an older couple I recognized as Derek's parents. All 4 looked up in surprise as I appeared in the doorway. "Tiffany," Amber's voice was unnaturally high. "We weren't expecting you until later tonight." "Clearly," I replied coldly, looking pointedly at the extra luggage in my hallway. "What's going on here?" Amber plastered on a smile. "Oh, you remember Derek's parents, Roger and Linda? They decided to come visit us for a little while. Isn't that nice?" I opened my mouth to object, to remind everyone that this was my house and I hadn't authorized any guests, when Amber jumped up, grabbed my arm, and practically dragged me into the kitchen. "Just give us a minute," she called over her shoulder before closing the kitchen door behind us. "Have you lost your mind?" I hissed. "I specifically said no guests. I know, she whispered, her eyes pleading. But I need you to play along, just for a little while. 2 weeks, tops. 2 weeks? Absolutely not. I want them gone tomorrow. Please, Tiffany. Her voice dropped even lower. I told them this house belongs to me. Derek played along. They've been treating me so much better since they think I have this nice place. After the business failed, they've been so cold to me, blaming me for distracting Derek or whatever. This is helping us save face. My jaw literally dropped. You're out of your mind. I'm not playing along with this insanity. Please. She grabbed my hands. I'll do all the housework. I swear. I'll cook, clean, do laundry. Everything I haven't been doing. Just pretend you're staying with me for a while because you're having work troubles. Please, Tiffany. I've never asked you for anything. I looked at her desperate face and felt myself wavering. It was ridiculous, completely insane, but somehow, I found myself nodding. 2 weeks, not a day longer, and you'd better keep your promise about the housework. Relief flooded her features. Thank you. I swear you won't regret it. We returned to the living room, where I was introduced as Amber's sister who was temporarily staying with her due to some work issues. Derek's parents nodded sympathetically. Though Linda's eyes held a hint of judgment, dinner that evening was takeout from the restaurant across the street, though Amber claimed she'd made everything herself. Linda and Roger dominated the conversation, explaining how their son's business had failed due to unscrupulous partners and cutthroat competitors, never once suggesting that Derek might bear any responsibility. As the meal ended, Amber turned to me with a sweet smile that immediately set off alarm bells. Tiffany, would you mind handling the dishes while I chat with Roger and Linda? Thanks, sis. And just like that, I knew I'd been played. As I scraped plates at the sink, watching Amber laugh and charm her in-laws in my living room, I had the sinking feeling that her promises about housework would never materialize. My prediction about Amber's broken promises proved spot on. A week into this bizarre charade, and I'd become the unofficial maid, cook and punching bag for the entire household. Every morning, I'd leave for work while everyone else slept in. Derek had completely abandoned his job search, instead playing tour guide to his parents around town. They'd spend their days shopping, sightseeing and dining out, all while I worked to pay the house bills they believed belonged to my sister. When I'd return each evening, Amber would make a show of cooking dinner for her in-laws, which meant ordering takeout, transferring it to my grandmother's serving dishes, and then parading it out as her own creation. She'd even mess up the kitchen to make it look like she'd been cooking all day. Tiffany, could you help clean up the kitchen? Became her nightly refrain, always delivered with Linda and Roger watching. Since you're staying with us, it's only fair you contribute. I bite my tongue and do as asked, feeling Linda's judgmental stare boring into my back. She'd taken to making little comments within my earshot. It's so generous of Amber to help her sister during hard times. Family should always come first. Or, I raised Derek to be successful, but also to help those less fortunate. I'm glad he's supporting both his wife and her struggling sister. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at work, I cornered Amber in the laundry room. This has to stop, I said. You promised you'd do the housework, but I'm doing everything while you play hostess in my house. She had the decency to look guilty. I know. I'm sorry. It's just that Linda has such high expectations, and I don't want to disappoint her. When are they leaving? It's been over a week. They need to go. I'll talk to Derek, she promised, but I could tell from her expression that nothing would change. That night, I received the monthly utility bills and nearly collapsed. The cost had more than doubled with 5 people in the house. Extra water usage, electricity running all day, heating kept at tropical levels because Linda was sensitive to cold. It all added up to hundreds of dollars more than my usual bills. I stormed downstairs, bills in hand, finding Amber alone in the kitchen. Look at this. I thrust the papers at her. The utilities have doubled. You need to pay at least half. Amber scanned the bills, her eyes widening. I can't afford this. We don't have any money right now. That's not my problem. You're all living here, using water and electricity all day while I'm at work. I'm not covering this alone. Don't be like that, Amber whined. We're family. Can't you help us out just this once? My patience finally snapped. No. I'm tired of this whole situation. If you can't contribute financially, then you need to at least do what you promised and take care of the house. But you haven't done that either. I'm sick of being taken advantage of. I hadn't realized how loud I'd gotten until I heard the front door open. Derek and his parents returned from their latest outing, catching the tail end of our argument. "What's going on here?" Roger demanded, his eyebrows furrowed. Amber's expression morphed instantly from petulant to victimized. "Tiffany doesn't want to pay her share of the bills," she said, her voice small and hurt. I stared at her in disbelief. After everything, she was still throwing me under the bus. Linda stepped forward, her face stern. "Young lady, I don't understand your attitude. Your sister has generously opened her home to you during your difficulties, and this is how you repay her? By refusing to contribute?" "That's not what I started," but Roger cut me off. "Frankly, we've noticed your lack of gratitude since we arrived. Amber cooks and maintains this beautiful home, while you just come and go as you please, taking advantage of her goodness." My head was spinning. The sheer absurdity of being lectured about taking advantage of Amber in my own house was too much. Without another word, I grabbed the bills and retreated to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I could hear them downstairs, their muffled voices rising and falling. I imagined Amber playing the victim, her in-laws comforting her, all at my expense. The injustice of it burned in my chest. When hunger finally drove me downstairs for dinner, the atmosphere was frigid. Linda and Roger barely acknowledged my presence, while Amber avoided meeting my eyes. Only Derek seemed uncomfortable with the tension, fidgeting with his napkin and attempting small talk that quickly died. Then Linda cleared her throat. "Amber, dear. My father has always taught me that honesty and respect are the foundations of any household." "Of course, Mom," Amber replied. "Which is why we feel we must speak up." Linda shot a pointed look in my direction. "We don't think it's working out having your sister here. She's clearly taking advantage of your hospitality, and frankly, her attitude is affecting the peace of your lovely home." I nearly choked on my water. Roger nodded in agreement. "You've been more than generous. But there comes a point where you have to put your own family first. Derek agrees, don't you, son?" Derek mumbled something unintelligible, studying his plate intently. Linda continued. "We think it would be best if Tiffany found other living arrangements soon." All eyes turned to Amber, waiting for her response. I watched her curiously, wondering if she'd finally come clean about whose house this actually was. She hesitated, her eyes darting between her in-laws and me. I could see the internal struggle playing out on her face. Then, with a deep breath, she turned to me. "Tiffany," she said, her voice unnaturally firm, "I think it would be best if you packed your things. I need you to move out in 2 weeks." The silence that followed was deafening. Roger and Linda nodded approvingly, while Derek stared at his wife in shock. Amber's eyes met mine, pleading silently for me to play along one more time. But something in me had finally snapped. I'd reached my breaking point. I slowly stood up, placed my napkin on the table, and looked around at the people who had invaded my life and my home. "No," I said quietly. "I don't think I will." The room fell silent after my refusal. Linda's mouth hung open in shock, while Roger's face reddened with indignation. "Excuse me?" Linda finally sputtered. "This isn't your decision to make, young lady." I leaned forward, placing my palms flat on the dining table, my grandmother's table, in my house. "Actually, it is. Everyone in this room has exactly 2 days to pack their things and leave, and I mean everyone." Amber's face drained of color. "Tiffany, please. Can we talk about this in private?" "No more private talks, Amber. I'm done with the lies and manipulation." I turned to Linda and Roger. "There's something you should know. I've let Amber and Derek stay here temporarily because they needed help, but this is my house. I own it. I pay the bills." Linda's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Amber, is this true?" Amber looked like she might throw up. "I can explain. You told us this was your house." Roger's voice had turned dangerously quiet. "You showed us around like you owned the place." Derek finally spoke up. "Dad, we were just trying to save face after the business failed. We didn't want you to know how bad things had gotten." The next few minutes were chaos. Linda and Roger shouted at Derek and Amber. Amber cried and tried to defend herself. Derek sat with his head in his hands, looking defeated. I stood watching the fallout of my sister's lies crumbling around her. Finally, I'd had enough. "Quiet," I slammed my hand on the table hard enough to make the dishes rattle. "I don't care about your family drama. I want all of you out of my house, now." Linda stood up with as much dignity as she could muster. "We'll be leaving immediately. We wouldn't stay another minute in a house built on lies." She glared at her son and daughter-in-law. "And you two, don't expect to come running to us after this humiliation." Within an hour, Linda and Roger had packed their bags and called a taxi. They left without saying goodbye to anyone, the door slamming behind them with finality. As soon as they were gone, Amber exploded. "How could you do this to me? You've ruined everything. They'll never forgive us now." "Me? You lied to them, Amber. You lied to me. You've been taking advantage of me since the day you moved in." I was desperate. Their approval means everything to Derek's future. Now we have nothing. "That's not my problem," I said calmly. "You have 2 days to find somewhere else to live." Amber's face contorted with rage. "You've always been jealous of me, always. Just because Grandma left you this house. She left me this house because she was my grandmother, not yours. And because I was the only one who spent time with her, who cared about her. You only showed interest in what you could get from her." "That's not true." "It is true. Just like it's true that you haven't changed a bit since we were kids. You still think the world revolves around you, that rules don't apply to you, that everyone should bend over backward to accommodate you. Well, I'm done accommodating you, Amber. Get out of my house." I turned and walked upstairs, locking myself in my bedroom to the sound of Amber's continued shouting. I was shaking with adrenaline but also felt strangely calm. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to my sister without backing down. Early the next morning, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Tiffany, what in the world is going on? Amber called me last night hysterical, saying you've thrown her and Derek out. They have nowhere to go. They can stay with you and Robert. Your house isn't that small." "That's not the point. Family helps family, you know that." I laughed bitterly. "Does that rule apply to Amber too? Because she hasn't done a thing to help me since she moved in. Instead, she lied to her in-laws, claiming my house was hers, and then tried to kick me out when they suggested it." "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Mom, for once. Listen to me instead of automatically taking Amber's side. She and Derek moved in, promised it would be temporary, then invited his parents without asking me. She left all the housework to me while pretending to her in-laws that she was the lady of the house. When I asked them to contribute to the doubled utility bills, she refused, and then blamed me in front of everyone." My mother was silent for a moment. "Well, I'm sure she didn't mean." "I don't care what she meant. I've been more than generous, and she's taken advantage at every turn. They need to leave today. Tiffany, please reconsider." "No. And honestly, Mom, I don't want to hear from you or Robert either if you're just going to defend her like always. I'm tired of being the responsible one, who never gets any consideration." I hung up before she could respond. It felt surprisingly good to finally stand my ground. By that evening, Amber and Derek had packed their belongings. They didn't say goodbye. In the following weeks, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Amber and her in-laws were no longer on speaking terms. Apparently, they'd told her she wasn't welcome in their home after the deception. My mother called several times, leaving voicemails that gradually evolved from demanding I apologize to awkwardly suggesting family dinner to clear the air. I deleted them all. 3 months after the blow-up, my house was peaceful again. The utility bills returned to normal. My work trips became enjoyable rather than necessary escapes. I redecorated the blue bedroom, converting it into a home office where I could work remotely when not traveling. I sit now on my grandmother's porch swing, watching the sunset over the neighborhood she loved. This house isn't just a building. It's my sanctuary, my inheritance, my home. And finally, blissfully, it's mine alone again.